Let's move on to our science critic. Okay, let's see what he has to say today. And he talked about the fact that he believes it's semantics to talk about the difference between explanation and description. In his mind, they are synonyms. And if you get too much into the nitty gritty, he said, well, now you're doing semantics and I don't want to talk with you anymore. And, and they walk away. They don't realize we have to resolve these issues. Okay? We have to define these words. We cannot leave the room. The room is locked. There's 8 billion people in this conference room. No one can leave until we define the word explanation and differentiate it from description. A lot of people think that an explanation is just a series of descriptions. And no, that's not the case. And so they should look more closely at these two words. And let's go with what this fellow had to say first, okay? And then we'll move on to answer him, okay? Here it goes. Give me a second here. Here it goes.
The questions and issues to be addressed in this rebuttal include: is a description the same thing as an explanation? And is pointing out the differences between description and explanation a trivial exercise in semantics?
One day, I hope that Bill Gaede will realize that explaining and describing are two sides of the same coin, and that all he's doing is talking about semantics here.
Okay, so what's the problem with what this fellow says? Well, let's go first with authority, okay? Because these people are heavy on authority. So let's bring authority to bear, and here we have Mr. Donald Simonek, and this is what he says. He's a professor emeritus at the university, physics, and he says, science doesn't explain, science describes. Okay? Now, why did he say that? Well, because he's not a physicist. He's really a mathematician. Mathematics can only describe, and therefore what the mathematicians have done is equate science with mathematics. And so they say mathematics just describes, all we do is measure, calculate, and that's called science, physics, which they equate to physics. And that's where we have the problem, because that's not the type of questions people ask a physicist. People want to know how the universe works. They want to know why a pencil falls to the floor. They want to know how a magnet, by what means, by what mechanism, a magnet attracts another. Those are the questions people want to answer. Those are the questions people consider part of physics. And those are the questions these people can't answer because they give you an irrational explanation. And when you question them and say, well, hold it, that's irrational. Say, well, we don't understand it either, and we don't care because it's not part of our job description. We don't do those kinds of work, that kind of work. And so that's what they say. And that's why this fellow ends up saying, look, we don't explain. We just describe, because that's all that mathematics can do. So that's the first thing we have to note. The second thing is that apparently Mr. Simonek can tell the difference between a description and an explanation because he's saying science doesn't explain, science describes. He's telling you in your face. So if you think that an explanation is description and vice versa, think again. Okay, he's telling you it's not. It's just that you're not smart enough to know the difference. Okay, so come up to speed, get on that steep learning curve, and try to figure out why description is not an explanation or vice versa. Okay, science we do not describe, and science we explain, and we hopefully do it rationally. Okay, so here's the definitions that we propose for description and explanation. You can see that there is a difference, and we should chop these words very tightly. We should define them very rigorously so that you do not escape on any tangent and say, well, description is the same thing as explanation. Here we make it black and white so that you can see why a description is not an explanation. And those are the definitions we're going to hold you to. If you have a different definition for description, especially, hey, bring it on. Okay, we'd like to tear it to pieces. Here it goes. Okay, description, to describe, right? A listing of properties of a physical object. That's what a description is. We just list the properties, okay? So we say a chair, it's got 4 legs, brown, made out of metal, whatever. That's a description, okay? And if you measure it and say it's 10 feet, you're also giving me a description. You haven't explained anything so far, okay? In science, we use adjectives to describe objects. We use adverbs to qualify or characterize motion. We would rather use, by the way, a different notion for when we have motion. When we're, for example, describing something that happened versus describing a chair or a tree or a rock, we would like to use a different word, a narrative, and to narrate. Okay, when you narrate, you're describing, but you're describing something in motion. It could be a movie, whatever, motion of a tiger, whatever. Then you're describing. We call that narrate or narrative or narration. Explanation, what is that? Well, that's a little different. The causes, okay, underlying a phenomenon, as far as physics is concerned, a physical interpretation, a movie of a mechanism. That's what it is to explain, to disclose the manner in which a consummated event occurred. And now you can see why mathematics, so-called science, right, does not explain according to the mathematicians, because they cannot explain. They cannot explain in a rational manner. It's not part of their job description, okay? And here are some examples, okay, again, with the definitions. Description, a typically chronological listing of properties or behaviors, okay? And you can see the gravitational field of the sun, known as curved spacetime, is the centripetal force that causes the Earth's almost circular orbit, okay? You have not explained anything with that, okay? You have not explained the cause of gravity. All you said, look, there's a field, whatever that is, because it's not a physical object, okay? And you have curved spacetime, again, not a physical object. And so we do not know what prevents the Earth from flying out of the solar system, okay? What causes it? And then at the bottom you have another example. If the electrons in each of the magnets spin in the same direction, you have a strong magnetic field that produces attraction. They have not explained attraction. All they say that when a magnet attracts another, it turns out that the electrons are spinning in the same direction. That's what they're saying, but they're not saying the cause. You cannot explain with the twirling of electrons how a magnet attracts physically, it pulls on another magnet, okay? Or even if they go in opposite directions, how they repel. So the problem is that these are not explanations, but people think these are explanations, and that's where the confusion arises. That's why this fellow who says, "Oh, it's just semantics," no, it's not semantics. It's that he's just not smart enough to understand the difference between an explanation and a description. On the other side, you have the explanations, the why, okay, the causes. Explanation revealing the causes that underlie mechanisms. There you see examples. The centripetal force that keeps the Earth bound to the sun is mediated by cables. That would be an explanation. We don't care if you believe in it or not, whether you agree or like it. What we're saying is this is an explanation by someone. Theorists can come and say, look, everything's connected by cables, and so now we can explain why the Earth doesn't fly out of the solar system. The one on the left, the blue one, cannot tell you that by saying, look, it's curved spacetime, because he's curving a concept. You still don't understand the cause, the physical cause. And then at the bottom there, bottom right, angels holding hands between two magnets and pulling causes attraction. You may not like that theory, but that is an explanation. It's an explanation of how a magnet attracts another, because you can visualize it. I can make a movie of it. Put angels, on each side of the magnet, and they pull on each other. So you have explained a mechanism, whether you like it or not. The guy on the left, he said electrons spinning, that's not an explanation. He hasn't explained the cause. Okay, he's describing and introducing the explanation, the description as an explanation. Okay, and yeah, for these fellows, it's all semantics, it's all word salad. It goes in one ear, comes out the other. They're not even paying attention because they don't understand the difference between an explanation and a description. And so for them, yeah, it's just word wizardry. It's just semantics.